Is Mexico's president afraid of the cartels? Trump has a plan to save Hollywood. Then more on this week's America Uncovered headlines. Welcome to America Uncovered. I'm Chris Chappell. According to Realtor.com's most recent inventory report, American families need to earn 70% more than they did 6 years ago in order to buy a typical home. What? You mean to tell me that in 2019, it would have been better for me to invest in real estate than in Bitcoin? But that Instagram crypto influencer told me it would go to the moon, and if it had, then I'd be able to afford a house. The only silver lining in this story is that mortgage rates and median home prices have remained flat over the past year. So while prices aren't likely to fall, at least they aren't still skyrocketing for now, which isn't really that much of a silver lining. Be like a doctor saying, you were stabbed 70 times and likely won't be able to have the life you've dreamed of and your parents' generation gets to enjoy. But on the bright side, after 6 years, we've managed to stop the constant bleeding from your eyeballs. For now. But fortunately, the government is stepping in to help and actually offering money to people to seek a new home. And by that I mean the Trump administration will pay immigrants who are in the U.S. illegally $1,000 to leave the country voluntarily. Now, if you're thinking, why are they spending taxpayer money on this? Apparently, at least according to Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, this is a 70% savings for taxpayers. She says, if you are here illegally, self-deportation is the best, safest, and most cost-effective way to leave the United States to avoid arrest. DHS is now offering illegal aliens financial travel assistance and a stipend to return to their home country through the CBP Home app. Man, there really is an app for everything nowadays. You can get one to mark places where you pooped and one to prevent you and your family from being sent to an El Salvadorian super prison. And speaking of people being detained in a super prison, Alcatraz. The notorious prison closed in 1963 after it was deemed too expensive to keep operating. Since then, it's operated as a museum and the setting for The Rock, the best action movie about The Rock, not featuring The Rock. But that could soon change, as President Trump says he wants to reopen Alcatraz.
It represents something very strong, very powerful in terms of law and order. Our country needs law and order. Alcatraz is, I would say, the ultimate. We'll see if we can bring it back in large form, add a lot. But I think it represents something. Right now it's a big hulk that's sitting there rusting and rotting.
If Trump is able to do this, it would be historic for a few reasons. One, it would be the first time someone other than Spirit Halloween reopened a building that's just sitting there rusting and rotting. Second, as much as people are pointing out the cost and potential human rights concerns of reopening this notorious prison, it means we'd be bringing notorious prisons back to the U.S. Take that, El Salvador. The Associated Press reports that Trump blasted Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum for rejecting his offer to send U.S. troops into Mexico to help fight the cartels and the drug trade. Here's what he actually said.
Mexico wanted help with the cartels. We would be honored to go in and do it. I told her that I would be honored to go in and do it. The cartels are trying to destroy our country. The president of Mexico is a lovely woman. But she is so afraid of the cartels that she can't even think straight.
First thing that comes to my mind after seeing this is, can we please put a moratorium on news outlets saying someone got blasted when they only received mild criticism or at worst a tepid rebuke? That's like politely telling someone their fly is down and someone overhears it and says, man, this guy just got slammed over his crotch botch. And second thing that comes to my mind is, where does Trump get off saying that? What possible reason would a politician in Mexico have to be afraid of the cartels? It's not like they're running rampant, committing a wave of political murders and eating away at democracy. And even if that did ever happen, it's a thing of the past and definitely, for sure, 100% didn't just happen within the last 2 weeks. I'm sure Sheinbaum turned Trump's offer down because Mexico doesn't need the help, and definitely not because she's afraid of her bosses. I mean, the cartels. And after the break, Trump goes to Hollywood. Welcome back. President Trump said he would talk to Hollywood executives. Is this over an expanded role in a Little Rascals sequel, Too Little, Too Rascal? No, it's over his announcement that he was considering placing a 100% tariff on movies not made in the U.S. Is this because of his notorious hatred for reading and he's trying to put an end to subtitles? No. It's because of a conversation he had with Jon Voight, Angelina Jolie's father. He recommended for Trump to impose tariffs on films, quote unquote, produced in foreign lands, saying filming outside the US will lead to Hollywood's demise, since shooting in other countries is often cheaper. This would be an attempt to discourage that practice by making it pricier. This may be a reference to the British film industry, which has, in recent years, won several contracts to film American movies in UK studios. Although I don't think it's shooting in England or Vancouver that's killing Hollywood. I think it's terrible movies. Although you never know. I'm sure Mufasa, the live-action prequel to the live-action remake of The Lion King that wasn't actually live-action since it was all CGI, wouldn't have been a blockbuster if instead of the Serengeti, it took place in San Francisco. Unless it's about the lions trying to break out of Alcatraz. Then it would have made enough money to fund the prison's reopening. Hey, you know how everyone's been having a laugh at Trump's jokes about running for a third term? And of course, by laugh, I mean accusing him of soft-launching a fascist dictatorship. Well, it turns out those jokes were just jokes, as Trump explicitly clarified he won't be running for a third term.
There are many people selling the 2028 hat, but this is not something I'm looking to do. I'm looking to have 4 great years and turn it over to somebody, ideally a great Republican to carry it forward. But I think we're going to have 4 years, and I think 4 years is plenty of time to do something really spectacular.
So he says he's going to step down. And by saying he hopes it's a Republican that takes over, he's implying there will be an election. And the fact that the Vatican selected a new pope that wasn't him kind of implies that this was just a joke as well. Although considering the new pope at a minimum seems not too fond of Trump's policies, while the Orthodox Archbishop of America compared Trump to St. Constantine, who converted the Roman Empire to Christianity, clearly Trump is finding himself in the middle of the Great Schism. We once had a big, beautiful church. No one had ever seen anything like it. And then the schism, oh, it was a terrible thing. Wouldn't have happened under my watch. Now we're going to fix it. We're going to make Christianity great again. RFK Jr. is set to testify before the Senate Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee on May 14th over the Department of Health and Human Services' proposed $500 million budget for the 2026 fiscal year. Kennedy is a controversial figure, with many praising his efforts to remove harmful additives from U.S. food and fight the pharmaceutical industries. But many also criticize his methods, with 19 states suing him for overhauling HHS and making several cuts. Although I'm sure Kennedy empathizes with those who were cut, because if anyone knows what it's like being totally cut, it's RFK Jr. There might also be a good reason to overhaul HHS, as Kennedy alleges they were involved in some pretty dark activities.
During the Biden administration, HHS became a collaborator in child trafficking and for sex and for slavery. And we have ended that, and we're very aggressively going out and trying to find these children, the 300,000 children that were lost.
He's referring to the fact that several migrant children have gone missing in the system, and several wound up being abused, some by those who were supposed to care for them. I covered that in this video, link below, spoiler, a lot of mental health breaks in that one. However, it's worth noting that according to Aaron Reichlin-Melnick, a policy director at the American Immigration Council, this 300,000 missing children statistic stems from children who didn't show up for court notices. And just because they didn't show up doesn't mean they were all being trafficked. So it's not 300,000. It's probably less, though we don't know how many less since we lost track of them. So less of a silver lining and more of another doctor saying we managed to stop the bleeding from your eyeballs for now. Then there's the matter of RFK Jr. and vaccines. Some say he just wants more transparency, while others claims he's an outright anti-vaxxer. And with a measles outbreak reaching over 1,000 confirmed cases in West Texas, the largest outbreak since the 90s, many are blaming Kennedy, saying his stance on vaccines is leading to children's deaths. Plus, he's been known to say some interesting things about vaccines.
Because the MMR vaccine contains a lot of aborted fetus debris and DNA particles.
What? I specifically asked for my vaccines to be like my orange juice, no pulp. For anyone worried, No, there is no fetus debris in the MMR vaccine. It was just developed using tissue from an aborted fetus's lung and a weakened version of the rubella virus. But that was back in the 1960s. It was purified and no physical components of it remain today. There, don't you feel much better? However, despite whatever you may think about RFK Jr., there are just a few things wrong with trying to blame him for the measles outbreak. One is the fact this outbreak began in January, before he was even confirmed as the health secretary. The parents who chose not to vaccinate their children in West Texas made that decision years ago. Another is that this outbreak began in a community of Mennonites who chose not to vaccinate their children for religious reasons. RFK Jr. has nothing to do with religious decisions, even if having abs at his age is a miracle. The New York Times criticized Kennedy for, according to them, searching for new measles treatments instead of urging vaccination, which is a bit silly since even if he did urge vaccination, that's not going to change the Mennonites' minds. So seeking new treatments is the best way to help those already afflicted. Also, Kennedy has endorsed the MMR vaccine, which upset some of his supporters who are skeptical about it. So RFK Jr. can't really win either way here. So it doesn't really appear that RFK Jr. is solely to blame for this measles outbreak. I get the confusion, though, as to why people think he's against vaccines, because his abs are sick. And finally, let's end on a bit of good news. President Trump announced the U.S. will stop bombing Yemen.
The Houthis have announced that they are not, or they've announced to us at least, that they don't want to fight anymore. They just don't want to fight. And we will honor that, and we will stop the bombings.
Wow, a de-escalation of war. With the Russia and Ukraine and Israel and Hamas wars raging on, with Israel tentatively planning to escalate things, it's nice to see at least one war coming to a close. Before you go, be sure to check out this episode of America Uncovered recommended by the algorithm. Don't cross the algorithm. Otherwise, it'll show you nothing but yodeling Limp Bizkit cover bands for months. I would know. And as always, support America Uncovered and screw YouTube by subscribing to our new website, americauncovered.tv. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. Thank you for watching America Uncovered.